Welcome to episode 207 of the Campus Comics Cast. This is Scott Reed, and I'm joined by
Mike Atchison.
And in this episode, we join a multitude of podcasters from around the country to celebrate JSApril. Mike, do you want to fill us in on the details for JSApril?
Well, just in case you haven't heard it here or anywhere else, JSApril is an event that crosses over a multitude of podcasters and bloggers that cover comic, geeky subjects like we do. And the theme is the JSA, as you might glean from the title. So in the past, there's been events, an annual event called JLMA, and this one was decided to honor the Justice Society, the original group, the ones that started it all in the Golden Age. And basically it's celebrating 85 years of this group. They're the world's first and greatest superhero team, as they say. So back in 1940, 8 heroes united to create the world's very first superhero team, the Justice Society of America. So here it is 85 years later, and like I said, all podcasters and bloggers are celebrating this event by calling it JSApril. So throughout April 2025, you can join dozens of podcasters and bloggers as we each share our own unique tributes to the original and greatest superhero team. Every participant in JSApril is doing their own thing, so whether you choose to enjoy just one entry or experience them all, that's up to you. You're going to find something you like. It's almost guaranteed. So follow the action on social media with the hashtag JSApril. That's JSAPRIL. And you can visit the Fire and Water podcast website for like a complete listing of all of them. And it is a long list. It's way too long to try to read here. So go to fireandwaterpodcast, all one word, .com/JSApril.
So Mike, you chose these issues for us. What was your reasoning behind the choice?
I knew, you and I have reviewed some old-timey Golden Age stories involving the Justice Society, or I remember when we did the first appearance of Wonder Woman, which was in All-Star Comics number 8, and we didn't even realize, at least I'm pretty sure I didn't. I know I didn't, but I'm pretty sure you and Shad didn't realize either that the Wonder Woman's first appearance was just a small story in the back of the main story. So I don't know. Did you read that entire issue? Or did you?
I read the first one, and then after that first issue, I was like, I am not punishing myself by reading any more of these.
So that's why I'm like, we can't do a Golden Age one. Even some of these Silver Age stories that we have reviewed were pretty torturous. I mean, they've got a historical place in history, or a historical value. But for this, I wanted to find something that really resonated with me in the modern day, which kind of includes the last 30 years. So I basically was looking at some storylines in the early 2000s in the Geoff Johns. Well, you could go before that. You could probably find something with James Robinson. But the Geoff Johns run, there was several to pick from, and this is what I landed on, and you were gracious enough to agree with it.
All right, so what is it that we are talking about in this episode?
Well, we have JSA 68 through 72, and the overarching name of the storyline is called JSA/JSA because it's a crossover between the modern, as in 2005, Justice Society members and the originals from 1951. That's where most of this story is taking place. Those members. So you're going to hear us talk about both the original and legacy versions of certain characters like Hourman and like Starman Stargirl, or I'm blanking on a couple other ones just off the top of my head.
Mr.
But there's,
Terrific.
yeah, Mr. Terrifics, yeah. So you'll hear us mention their alter ego name just so we can keep it straight in our heads. But yeah, so it's basically a team up between them to kind of to restore the timeline. I don't want to spoil the 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 quick synopsis or the quick explanation of it. So that's
Well,
really what it
speaking of the
is.
quick synopsis, why don't you go ahead and give us the quick synopsis of this story?
Okay. Oh, I want to mention this is by Geoff Johns writing.
Mm-hmm.
Don Kramer is the penciler throughout the 5 issues, and Keith Champagne does the inks. And the covers are outstanding. Three of them, 68, 69, and 72, are by Alex Ross. And then Dave Gibbons is the penciler on 70 and 71. So, the quick synopsis, and I mean quick. The modern JSA must travel to the past to convince the original JSA to come out of retirement to restore the timeline dismantled by Per Degaton, their old villain.
All right, now you threw in the per in there for per degaton. At no point in this story, though, is he referred to as per degaton. It's only degaton.
I don't even know if that is an honorific or if it's a title or whatever. I just know that's his full name, but I've referred to him as Degaton
Okay.
as well. Um,
Okay.
he's not a villain that has any powers. He just has had the technology to be able to manipulate the time stream or to try and time travel. He's got some devices that he uses for his nefarious deeds, but yeah, Degaton, everybody will know. There's only one, so I think everybody will know who we're talking
Okay.
about.
I was glad to see. I was glad to read this not only for the Geoff Johns writing, but Don Kramer actually was a guest at my comic book convention several years ago. So I actually have on my wall a blank cover that he did of the Justice League
Oh, that's
for
cool.
me. So yeah, so it's got. I'm staring at it right now. So
Well, but
so yeah, it was cool. It was cool to
yeah,
see his name. And I'm just going to tell you that when you look at Don Kramer's work, he is an extremely underappreciated artist.
yeah, I would agree.
Because he had a good run on Wonder Woman as
Yeah,
well, as an artist. So it's like sometimes you see these artists and you wonder why they're not still working currently
yeah.
in the industry. So
Well, between him and Steven Sadowski, that first 74 or so issues, that's the entire run of the JSA. But that right after that incarnation, there was another incarnation called Justice Society of America, also written by Geoff Johns, and I don't remember who was doing the art on that on the inside, but that first run though was all Sadowski and Kramer, except for some one-offs here and there. You did have a few with Peter Snaberg and some others, but yeah, I would agree. He is underappreciated. Oh, Leonard Kirk did some as well. He did a good chunk.
well, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we just start diving into each of these issues individually?
I don't think so. I think we can. I think we can really. We're gonna. It's like I said. It's a 5-part story, and
Okay.
we have Scott's got a nice synopsis written for us, and then I have some notes, and we'll kind of go back and forth as we usually do.
All right. So this is issue 68, titled "Making History." In the present day, Stargirl returns to her Nebraska home after a battle with Solomon Grundy. She reminisces on how the original JSA has impacted the JSA of today and on how Atom Smasher has failed to live up to the JSA's example. Back in 1951, the original JSA is sitting before Congress, specifically the House Un American Activities Committee, and being asked to unmask despite all the good they have done. On the stand is Agent Williams, who testifies the JSA is associating with a known agent of the other side. Green Lantern, fed up with the proceedings, teleports the JSA away. Agent Williams, looking on, comments on how it's going all according to history. 2 days later, the JSA, in their Gotham City headquarters, declare the time of the JSA is over. Newspapers begin reporting the JSA is wanted for questioning for un-American activities. We see Agent Williams picking up a paper, and as he walks down an alley, he transforms into Degaton, who orders his agents to kill the girl and her siblings. Back in the present, Stargirl arrives to family breakfast with her mother, sister, stepfather, and stepbrother to have it brutally interrupted by Degaton's agents, the Red Morgue, who kill all of Stargirl's family, including the infant Patricia. Rip Hunter arrives on the scene and whisks Stargirl away, informing her that if they act, her family can be saved. Rip Hunter and Stargirl arrive in 1951 and meet with the modern JSA, who Rip Hunter has already brought here, including Mr. Terrific, Our Man, Hakeem Thunder, Sand, and much to Stargirl's dismay, Atom Smasher. The issue ends with a shadowy figure referring to Stargirl as Courtney, who says, "Don't mess this up." All right, Mike, I know you got a lot to say about the first issue, so I'm going to let you go first, and then you can answer all my questions. Okay, and you're muted, so let's go ahead and fix that.
Okay, so oh man, I'm just so pleased to read this again. It's been 25 years for me, or 20 years, I guess. It's yeah. So I had forgotten just how this was really Geoff Johns, an example of him being at the top of his game in the mid 2000s. You can read this story, you can see how he really gets inside the characters' heads. You can see how he develops their interpersonal relationships. When you hear Courtney, just kind of like in her narrative, in her inner voice, she's talking about how Green Lantern smiled at when he smiled at her when she wasn't really sure of herself. Why she was on the JSA with all of these these veteran heroes, but just that smile kept her going. It's just a great example of his, and that's perfect for the JSA. Whereas I don't know if Johns would be the best writer for the JLA because they're not. That's not the type of team they are.
Yeah, John's like you said, he's probably at the top of his game through like Blackest Night, and then he kind of fell out of favor with a lot of people. I know Doomsday Clock kind of fell apart at the end and some of the stuff, but now you're really liking some current John stuff though with the stuff he's doing. Ghost Machine, right?
Yeah.
Isn't there a Ghost Machine book?
Yeah, those Ghost Machine books. He does both Redcoat and Geiger, and I'm not sure what other ones I think he's part of the brain trust that came up with that universe. But yeah, he's doing really well with that. It's nothing like this though. This is involving so many more characters, and I mean, and he's having to stay loyal to the history, but also be innovative. And he drew from like the whole House of Un-American Activity Committee. That's all from the Roy Thomas's America versus the Justice Society miniseries. That was like Roy's retroactive explanation for their disappearance in the early 50s, which was really because superheroes were kind of falling out of favor. People were going to westerns, stuff like that. But it works really good with the whole McCarthyism era.
Okay, so at the beginning of the issue, Stargirl is coming back after having fought Solomon Grundy. Was that something that was in the? I guess I should have looked this up. Was that something that was in the previous issue, or was that just they're just kind of saying what she was doing just for the purposes
I don't
of the
know.
story?
I honestly don't know. Obviously, for a reader at the time, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's what she did yet last issue." But I didn't go back and check that. Or, of course, Solomon Grundy's one of their mainstay villains, so that's more than likely, even if it wasn't part of the previous issue, it's more than likely to be accurate. As accurate as fictional work gets.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot with another question then, which there may not be an answer to.
Okay.
But so part of it, the problem when they're accused by Agent Williams on the stand is that they were associated with a member of the other side. Do we know who that was or who that might have been?
I think that's a foreshadowing of the setup that Per Degaton was going to do. The other side, meaning like the communists, or because I don't know if this might be spoiling it, but Degaton is trying to set them up by framing them for the assassination of the president. So I think that the idea is that would be the communists that are behind that.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he means by that.
I just didn't know if there were any Russian or communist heroes at the time. I even think they said they were bringing that person in. They weren't even like working with them. They were bringing that person in. Yeah, and I was just curious if you happen to know, like, if that was referring to an actual event, or maybe it was just something for this story.
There might have been. I really wanted, if I had time, I would have read the America versus the Justice Society before, after I read this, and I still am, I think, because it might be an allusion to something like that. Now, Degaton is for so long he was kind of a loser villain. He would steal. He was just kind of like frustrated working for a professor, and he was just a lowly assistant. But then he would get his hand on all the professor's time travel devices and then go do all of these things. But he'd always get beat down by the JSA, and go. I mean, always the end of the story was always he was this mopey, character. So he never was all that impressive. But this might be the first story where I seen him portrayed as being a pretty impressive and evil dude, because he was willing to. Well, he killed Stargirl's whole family, or his minions did.
Yeah. This is the first time I can recall reading a story with Degaton in it. I don't know of any other stories, and I've got some comments about that I'm gonna save to the very end.
Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, another example of John's writing skill in this era was that the family dynamics at breakfast with Stargirl's family. Her stepdad is Pat Dugan, who is the original Star Spangled Kids from the 40s, partner and chauffeur, Pat the Stripesy. So this is going back to, like, my gosh, leading comics and way back. And, it's just great how they made him her stepdad, and just to see the kids, her stepchildren, I was really kind of surprised when I seen that. Oh yeah, they know her secret identity. I'm like, I would never trust my siblings to keep a secret like that. So
no. And even if they know it, you don't wear your costume around the house, because if somebody just happens to show up at the door,
right.
It's like, oh, what's Stargirl doing here?
Right. Yeah, I don't know that I would have done it that way, but the murders were, again, being 20 years, I'd forgotten a lot of the details of this. They were pretty. That Red Morgue is the group that's
brutal.
Yeah, brutal,
Yeah,
and just seeing her,
brutal.
it reminded me of the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. So, spoilers for any
Right.
Game of Thrones fans.
Yeah.
And my last note on this, Scott, is that I'm usually not the biggest fan of time travel stories because my feeble mind is easily confused, especially when I go back and forth from the way DC and Marvel each kind of treat the timelines. But this one seems to be very cohesive. It doesn't have that troublesome prohibition against having being there together with a previous version of yourself. It doesn't it doesn't give you all those rules. It just says, okay, you got to go back and stop this from happening so that heroes can be inspired by the original heroes.
Okay, so the modern JSA has a member named Sand, but that's just Sandy, the sidekick of the original Sandman, not to be confused with Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah, or
Jack
Kirby's Sandman. So
right.
To add more to it, but it's and leave it to James Robinson in the Starman, the Jack Knight Starman series in the 90s. He really incorporates all of those. There's even a whole storyline called Stars and Sand, I think, and it shows it's just so good anyway. But yeah, there's I don't know if the next issue we can talk a little bit more about Sand and Sandy and what happened to him in the years between.
All right. Well, you ready to take issue 69, Mike?
Uh, I am. Okay. JSA 69, Guardian Angels. In 1951, Stargirl tracks down Ted Knight, Starman, at a rest home where he has placed himself after struggling mentally with his involvement in creating the atomic bomb. In Pittsburgh, an out-of-costume Mr. Terrific, that's the Michael Holt Mr. Terrific, finds the original Mr. Terrific, Terry Sloan, boarding a train but is unable to join him as the train has segregated cars. Terry is heading to New Orleans in search of his missing brother. In Calvin City, Al Pratt is with Mary, his soon-to-be fiancée, where he is approached by a couple of G-men. This all occurs with Atom Smasher watching. In Gotham City, Johnny Thunder is approached by Jakeem Thunder. Back at the rest home, Stargirl is still trying to convince Starman that what she is saying is not a figment of his imagination, and unfortunately Starman is not convinced, and Stargirl is sedated by the sanitarium staff. In New York City, Wesley Dodds dons his Sandman costume and proceeds to his secret hideout with Sand looking on. Also in New York, the two Dr. Midnights meet. In Hartford, Connecticut, Iron Man learns the original Iron Man is already on the trail of Perdegaton in Washington, D.C. And back in the sanitarium, we find Stargirl has been placed in a straitjacket and padded room as she begs to talk to Ted Knight. There's a lot of, this is jumping from one character's adventure to the next.
and it when we're reading this synopsis, it feels pretty disjointed, right? But when you're reading the actual comic, there's a page or two of all of these, city transitions, so it's not like you're just boom boom boom. You're getting a little bit of background and furthering the story before it jumps to the next town.
It really is it's really a tradition of telling these group stories where they all either they split up into smaller groups or individuals and they go on their own adventure. So this is done well. They each have clearly they were each chosen. I'm talking about the modern day JSAers were chosen for this mission by Rip Hunter because they have a connection with a particular JSA member from 1951. So that's the idea. They're all like, okay, let's split up. We got to go. You go here. You go here. You go here. And that's what we're seeing in this, like jumping from one scene to the other.
Because he doesn't go back after the powerhouse JSA members. He's not going after Green Lantern and Wonder Woman and Flash and Black Canary and Hawkman and Hawkgirl. He's going after what I would call the less powerful members of the JSA.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting. I mean, it's partly because there weren't any. Maybe in some cases there wasn't a legacy character to send back, like say for Hawkman and Hawkwoman or Hawkgirl. They didn't really have a legacy character alive at the time. I don't think Silver Scarab was alive, or Northwind from Infinity. And then you had Jade and Obsidian are the children of Green Lantern. I have no idea where they're at for this story, if they were just like written out of the JSA for a while at this point. But I'm sure there was some reason because, you would think they would go back to some of the more powerful and also more influential because they had to convince them to, that everybody had to get back together because Green Lantern was like, heck with this. We're just, you guys can pound sand. No pun intended. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wish that I've come to really enjoy Sandman because of the Sandman Presents. Was that what? Sandman Mystery Theater series.
Yes.
And I would have liked to have a little bit more Sandman than what we got in this story, just for that reason.
Yeah, and he probably has. I think I have it somewhere in my notes that he has the most mentally torturous part in the whole. in the years between 1951 and the modern era, because you know the reason. I mean, we did. This is the issue where Sand appears to him, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, in the hideout. Yep.
Yep. Sand tracks down Sandman, and Sandman is in his hideout, like you said, and he's.
Actually, it's the next one. Sorry,
Oh,
but go
okay,
ahead.
okay.
So because it's only like a one-liner in the synopsis in the next issue. So
Oh, okay. But anyway, there's
I
the
told
whole.
you wrong,
What I'm
yeah.
getting at is that Sandman. This is so confusing to say. I got to figure out how to say it. We find out in the 1970s Justice League, one of the Justice League Justice Society crossovers, in a story called Creature in the Velvet Cage. And what it was basically was the creature in that story was Sandy, the Golden Boy, who back in the 40s had been accidentally, I forget how, an experiment or something, turned into this creature that couldn't speak, uh, couldn't do much. He wasn't like mindless, but he just didn't really. So the only way I guess Sandman at the time could keep him safe was to keep him in this basically a velvet cage, or is just as comfortable as he can make it for him. And he goes for decades before a cure is found. And so, like it says in the story, Sandy Hawkins is actually a 25, he's in a 25-year-old body, but he was born in like 1920 something. So it's, the conversation between Wesley Dodds and Sandy or Sand is kind of tough. And again, I might be jumping ahead to the next issue, but it's basically Sand is telling Sandman that, look, I didn't remember a thing. I'm fine now. You don't have to worry about that, because remember that we're in 1951, and he's lying, of course, but he's doing it for his mentor's sake. So it was pretty heartfelt.
Well, since that happens in 70, we might as well jump into issue 70. So issue 70 is titled High Societies.
Yep.
The issue begins with a brief interlude as Black Adam discusses plans with several shadowy figures. Back in New Orleans in 1951, Mr. Terrific, Michael, once again is denied access to Terry because of segregation. Terry, still looking for his brother, arrives at the business of roulette. Terry learns that Ned, Terry's brother, has a child named Veronica who is being cared for by roulette. Back in Gotham, Hakeem Thunder is still trying to convince Johnny Thunder he is from the future. As Johnny leaves, Hakeem follows and accidentally dumps a tray of milkshakes on some college lettermen who proceed to start beating on Hakeem, who cannot call on Thunderbolt. Johnny Thunder joins the ruckus, but he also cannot call on Thunderbolt, so they fight against the college students the old-fashioned way. In New York City, Al Pratt has been asked by the G-Man to smash down the door of Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Looking on, Atom Smasher now understands that the original JSA did have to deal with some questionable actions. Sand reveals himself to Sandman. In New Orleans, Mr. Terrific Michael has decided to fight his way into Roulette's establishment, but as he prepares to enter, Mr. Terrific Terry comes busting out carrying his niece. Michael gives chase to Terry and follows him into a graveyard. In the sanitarium in Opal City, Stargirl is released by the shadowy figure from issue 68, who tells her to take Ted Knight to the stars. Stargirl then busts out Ted Knight. In Washington, D.C., Degaton has captured another time traveler, Walker Gabriel, and kills him by having a car hit him when he is 10 years old. Our Man busts into the scene, but Degaton uses time manipulation to quickly exhaust the 60 minutes of strength. In New York, the two Dr. Midnights have no trouble coming to an understanding. In New Orleans, Mr. Terrific Michael, while he is chasing Terry, runs straight into a KKK meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Terrific's. I knew, I'm thinking he's going back in time, being a black man, to 1951, and you knew there was going to be a couple of scenes where it was going to be a stark reminder of the times to him, and he even says, and I don't know if it was this issue or the previous one, that he definitely prefers the future. I think it was after he was refused.
I noticed that too. But one of the things I also noticed is that Hakeem Thunder had
he didn't.
issues that he encountered. So they so at this point, John's just chose to specifically isolate those. Now, okay, so I'm assuming Hakim is Arabic.
I think it's just the name that is chosen for him. No, he's Jakeem, or I don't know if it's Hakeem or
I always
Jakeem, but yeah,
okay.
no, but I don't think he's. I don't know
Okay.
enough about him. I can't remember. I don't think he's got
Well, maybe I should look
any
that
kind
up.
of like Middle Eastern descent or anything. It's just a.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I think it's he might be Muslim, and that he was given
Right.
a Muslim name or an Arabic name,
Okay.
because of that.
Okay. But yeah, he chose to put all of the segregation issues for Mr. Terrific instead of any of the other characters. Or the
Yeah,
only other
maybe it was
character that would have
because
been available.
Jakeem was with Johnny Thunder almost the entire issues or
Mm-hmm.
the entire story. He wasn't like out on his own trying to get on a train. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't written that way, but you can imagine that it would have been the same for him as a young man being African American. We do get to see a glimpse of the a future storyline when we see the profiles or the outlines of a new Injustice Society headed by Black Adam. That's about one
Mm-hmm.
of the very few, you know, hints at a future story.
I'm glad they. I mean, I always like it when I'm reading a comic book and they are dropping little hints about what's to come, and that just because the JSA has gone back in time doesn't mean that nothing's happening in the modern time. There's stuff happening that is going to have ramifications down the road. So
Yeah,
I always feel like it's great. It's a sign of a good writer who can inject that.
yeah,
At least let us know there's things going on.
yeah.
So
Now, Roulette is in this issue as you know. She's the one that was. She kind of tricked Terry Sloan with through some machinations to come to her, and she was going to like sweat him for some money so she could it is on based on principle alone. Some of that's kind of a contrivance, but what really got me is like, okay, I haven't had time to research it, but Roulette is in other stories, previous stories in JSA as a villain in the modern era. So I don't know if this Roulette is a grandmother or connected. I almost have to assume that she is, but uh, it's like I said, I didn't get it. It's all got to be on online somewhere. But
yeah,
I mean, legacy is such a big thing with the JSA, so I have to imagine that she is tied to. I know she's tied somehow to Mister Terrific in the past, like a relative of some sort. So, and maybe this is tying all that together. I don't know. She's a cool villain, though. I always thought that was a really kind of a nice set of, I don't want to say powers, but her mission statement is to basically bring him in villain or heroes into an arena to make money on people betting on who's going to win. Kind of a what was that? Not World War Hulk, but Planet Hulk, wasn't it?
Planet. Well, there was. I mean, there's been Planet Hulk and
Well,
World War Hulk. So
which one was it where the Collector or the Marvel villain brought the Hulk in to fight in an arena like a gladiator style deal where he was.
that would be Planet Hulk. But that storyline was adopted into Thor
That
Ragnarok.
might be what I'm mixing up with. Okay,
Yeah,
that's why you like that movie so much.
that's well. They just don't get me started on. We're not here to talk about how bad Thor Ragnarok was. We're here to talk about JSA. Now, there's a roulette in the New 52 that is named Veronica Sinclair, which
Okay.
has the same name as the child. And then there
Ah,
is Victoria Sinclair, and again, this is according to Wikipedia. Victoria Sinclair post crisis,
okay,
and that's from JSA Secret Files number 2.
okay.
So this would be the roulette Victoria Sinclair. Huh? I don't know. It's not super clear still.
Yeah.
So
It took, it did take Terry Sloan took some kahunas for him to snatch his niece. I'm not even sure if I agree with that. I mean, like literally, I guess he didn't want his niece to be raised by a villain. Um, but I mean, he Yeah, he took off running and put the kid in danger because the thugs were after him, and I just thought that was, I don't know, but it furthered the
There's,
story.
I've, yeah, the biography for roulette on Wiki does not mention anything about this roulette that we see here in JSA.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because it talks about roulette's grandfather was a Golden Age villain, but doesn't say anything about who ran a conventional casino. So I'm going to assume that the roulette that's in this story must be the daughter of the grandfather that ran
Maybe.
the casino.
I always thought that the roulette would have been related to the gambler if it was a Golden Age villain.
Oh, so was Ned Sloan, Mr. Terrific's brother, a villain, a supervillain? Because this says roulette's grandfather, which would have been potentially Ned Sloan,
Right.
was a Golden Age villain who ran a conventional casino and fought his brother, Terry Sloan. After meeting the second Mr. Terrific, Roulette comes to view him as an unworthy successor to Sloan. She runs it, so yeah. So I don't know. There's probably a whole lot more there.
Stay tuned,
that could be
folks.
dived into.
We'll have Geoff Johns
Yeah.
on our next episode, and he can explain it to us.
All right, you ready to go on to 71?
Real quick, there was a couple things that I wasn't expecting to see Gabriel Walker, the legacy Kronos character, who wasn't really a bad guy like the original Kronos. He was only in a one scene or two, or a page or so because he was killed retroactively, which was per Degaton's kind of MO. He would do that.
That's in the next issue. That's in 71, right?
I have
still
it
on
in my
70.
notes for 70.
Really?
I thought you said something
okay.
about that, but
Let's see. Oh, maybe I'm just. Yeah, because you haven't read 71 yet, the synopsis for 71. I just
No.
read the synopsis for 70.
okay, well, maybe I put the notes in the wrong place. But anyway, Gabriel Walker made an appearance he had a little mini series in the 90s, and didn't see him anywhere else. But he was here long enough to be killed by Degaton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's in 71.
Okay.
So just FYI. Pretty sure anyway.
Okay.
Because I'm still on my, on line. I'm still on 68, so I guess I should catch up here. 70. Up to 70 now. All right, 71. All right.
Wait a second. Hold on. Did we just read?
We just read 70. I just read JSA 70.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's time for you to read 71.
Yeah. Okay. JSA 71, Past Mistakes. In 1951, New York City, Al Pratt refuses to assist the two G-men. Adam Smasher steps in and attempts to take Adam with him, but Adam punches him instead. Back in New Orleans, Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, makes quick work of the KKK with a little late help from Terry. The two head back to meet the combined JSA squads. In Washington, D.C., our man is being tortured by Degaton as he deletes childhood friends and loves from his memory. The new Our Man, whose tachyon hourglass disrupts Degaton's ability to precisely know when he will arrive, is able to rescue the original Our Man. Not belabor the point, Stargirl, Sandy, and Adam Smasher are all able to convince their namesakes of the severity of the situation, and Hawkman and Hawkgirl join in as well. Back in Gotham City, Jakeem Thunder has convinced Johnny Thunder, and the two return to the JSA Gotham City headquarters to meet the mostly assembled and combined JSA team. Hawkman takes the lead in planning as the two Our Men burst in, knowing Degaton will attempt to assassinate the president in Washington, D.C. So, this is the one where...
I've only got one comment about this issue.
Okay, what is it?
Okay, so it's the JSA headquarters. Why did Our Man have to bust the door down?
I don't know. You think he'd have a key.
Yeah. It's like, I think we can get in here. Did you try the lock first?
There was a couple other missteps, I think, where and maybe I just missed it, but there was one scene where Michael Holt said he didn't have his T-spheres in the past, but then he did have them in the next issue. So,
He said they weren't. He said they weren't connected to GPS, so
oh,
he
that's
couldn't do
right.
all his closed caption and stuff. But you'll still use them to fight.
Okay,
So
okay.
he couldn't use them to track or
He had a
communicate.
local area
Yeah,
network that he could communicate.
there you
Okay.
go.
Um, yeah, the first thing I want to mention is that issue 71 has it's the cover by one of the covers by um, oh my gosh, Dave Gibbons.
Dave
Yeah,
Gibbons.
and it's the Golden Age Atom punching Atom Smasher. And I didn't know this, but when I was doing some research and looking at notes, it's an homage to the original Atom series from the 60s, Atom number 36, where you had Ray Palmer Atom punching Al Pratt. And you know how I like homage covers, so.
Okay, all right.
And
I don't
yeah,
guess I've seen that cover. So
yeah, I've got it. I just forgot about it. It wasn't close enough for me to really catch, but it's just yeah. Now I'm like I got to display those for a while so I can see the you know. So one thing one of the scenes in here was it was anytime you have a whether it's Giant Man or Giganta or Atom Smasher or Colossal Boy when they grow to big size and they just start pounding things. I love those. I remember seeing in a recent Wonder Woman issue where Giganta's like she's I think using the Washington Monument,
Monument, yeah.
against Wonder Woman. So yeah, I just love those kinds of scenes. And you know, I think after Stargirl and her trauma, I think Our Man had the worst way to go with Degaton retroactively killing his friend. So you imagine being under threat by the guy, and he just keeps knocking off. All he has to do is communicate with his Red Morgue, and they go back in time and kill people in their crib.
Yikes.
Otherwise, it
Got
was
anything else for 71?
just a couple cool scenes. I thought that night sky scene with Ted Knight, Starman, and Stargirl flying was good. Again, I what we alluded to earlier that that scene between Sandman and Sand, where Sand forgave him, for accidentally turning him into the Sand creature. That was poignant, and yeah. So, oh, and that one phrase that I think it was Sandman thinking back on this, and he says he remembered Green Lantern after Sandy got turned into the creature. He says he remembered Green Lantern telling him there's a reason we don't have children as sidekicks. So
Yeah.
that had to hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. So 72.
72. All right, so 72, titled JSA, JSA. At the White House in 1951, Harry Truman is discussing his issues with Joe McCarthy and the situation with the JSA when the JSA arrive on the White House front lawn to warn of Degaton's impending attack. As if on cue, Degaton arrives and the battle begins. Degaton is able to keep himself out of phase with the current time, so the heroes cannot touch him. Degaton uses a device which turns the atom into a living atomic bomb, which will soon explode. As the power of the Hour Men begins to fade, the tachyon hourglass is passed to Atom Smasher, who is able to seriously clock, haha, pun intended, Degaton.
I didn't even pick up
Then
on
to
that.
Stargirl, then to Stargirl, Starwoman appears, who tells her the secret of why the Thunderbolt is not able to be summoned. Hakeem and Johnny must say their magic words at the same time. A "see you" and "so cool" later, the pair wish for the atom to be free. Rip Hunter then appears to give the JSA a lift back to their own timeline as the original JSA continue the fight. Back in the present day, Stargirl returns home to find her family seated around the breakfast table with everything returned to normal. And then in the time strain, Degaton continues making plans, stating he loves watching the JSA die.
Yeah. And one of the
there.
okay, so one of the kind of cool things about the Thunderbolt being called forward by a phrase, it was always like by accident early on by Johnny Thunder. He was just saying something. He'd say you, like to
Hmm.
tell them, something, and all of a sudden the thunderbolt would appear. And then the modern Jakeem Thunder has his own little calling phrase, "so cool." So I always like the "say you" thing. Of course, it's spelled differently than.
So it's say you, not see you. Then.
Oh yeah, right. It's "say you." Yeah. Does that? I didn't hear you say
Okay.
it.
All
"See
right.
you," but so yeah.
I think I said see you.
Okay.
So because it was put CEU-UI. So.
Right. Yeah. But it's meant to be like he would say I don't know when they actually came up with the spelling of the Bandesian spelling for that phrase. It just was always "say, comma you," and yeah, it's just a funny thing. A lot of people don't like Johnny Thunder, and I always did. I mean, maybe not the Golden Age stories, and he was always kind of a
Right.
bumbler, but he was meant
Hmm.
back then to be a comedic relief. And,
Right.
you know,
Well, it seems
yeah.
like the Thunderbolt was always creating more problems than he was solving. Is kind of one of the things.
Yeah, yeah,
A
I
lot
think
more
they both were
mischief.
like, yeah, in the early days, it was both of them were, yeah, it was more of a comedy routine, and then in the 70s and 80s, it was more like the Thunderbolt was always fixing things for Johnny and getting him out of trouble. But yeah, I like
I
them.
only really have one final comment on 72.
Okay.
And you hear that argument about, whether or not certain villains should just be killed. Probably the best example of this is the Joker. It's like, why hasn't Batman, as many times as the Joker has killed people, why hasn't Batman just killed the Joker, or even just let him die, you know? And reading this one story about Degaton, if he is, you know, willing to wipe out Stargirl's family, including an infant, and has the ability to go into the timeline kind of as he chooses, it's almost like he should be on that list of
Yeah,
like, oh, you know what? We're not gonna save you.
yeah,
We're gonna let you
yeah,
die.
he's incorrigible. So it's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you could almost see someone trying to justify that being a storyline in and of itself. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, guess what? Issue 72 is also an homage cover to All Star Comics number 35. Again, I didn't know this until I was looking on fandom or something, but yeah, it's where you got Degaton trapped in an hourglass, and yeah, so I do also have to mention, Rip Hunter is mentioning, I think it was during their ride back to the future, to the present from 1951, that he said there was a knot in the time stream in 1985. Of course, we all know.
Knocked Power Girl on her butt, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and it really affected
Yeah.
Power Girl. Of course, that's the Crisis on Infinite Earths miniseries happened then, and that was supposed to wipe out everybody's memory of the multiverse, except for very few exceptions. Um, but
Well,
I,
it was one exception at the end of Crisis, right? Which
which
was
was Psycho
Psycho
Pirate.
Pirate.
Yes, correct.
Right.
And I think over time there's been a couple of other ones, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to believe that what Johns and Kramer were trying to do on that scene are those panels with Power Girl being kind of ripped apart and just going through some anguish, was that, you know, she lost her cousin, the Golden Age, the Earth 2, Superman, Kal-El, and also her entire history was rebooted. She wasn't a Kryptonian anymore. She was from
Mm-hmm.
Atlantis, the time of Aryan of Atlantis, 50,000 years ago. So I think that's a nod to that. And yeah, so Degaton also reveals. So I think Degaton also is one of those characters like Psycho Pirate that knew about the pre-crisis multiverse, because he mentions the Earth 2 Huntress in this issue. The
Oh,
one
I
that's the
missed that.
daughter of Bruce Wayne and
And Selena
Selena
Kyle.
Kyle. So yeah, so he knows about it too. If you go by, if this is canon from John's here.
Is that where he's talking to Hawk Girl and says something about Kendra? And she's like, who?
Probably, yeah.
Or is that some of
And that's
those?
one I missed. Yeah, because the
Okay.
hot girl that is in this story is the 1940s Shara Hall.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, because
and
this is just a few pages in to the last issue, and Hot Girl is flying over Degaton. She goes, Degaton? And Degaton says, they carved it on so many of them, Kendra. Who? It creeps me
who?
out. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess that
yeah.
is, yeah. Now another character that I didn't know who was in one of the earlier issues, the woman that kind of rescued Stargirl from the sanitarium and got her cosmic rod or whatever back
Hmm.
was just shown as a silhouette of a ponytailed woman, and I
Hmm.
had no
In
idea.
68.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's said in this last issue that was Patricia, her stepsister.
Hmm.
However, that's a one-off story. It's a one-off piece of history, alternate version, because there are also versions of this Star Woman being Courtney herself when she grows into adulthood, and
Ah,
that's
okay.
that you'll see that in some Superboy issues written by Carl Kiesel. Um, and yeah, and I also noticed that this Star Woman costume was reminiscent of Sylvester Pemberton's Star Spangled Kid costume. So yeah, yeah, it was. I really liked this last issue too. That big battle scene kind of reminded me of Avengers Endgame. Everybody's running, Um,
Yeah.
seeing Atom Smasher punch Degaton. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn. Part of me is like, I like that they didn't feel like they had to go through the entire fight to the end. It's like they got
yeah,
to a point where Rip Hunter's like, okay, the original JSA has this. You guys need to go back to your own timeline
yeah,
in the middle or near the end of the battle, right?
yeah.
And then we just know that they win. And I guess that's kind of nice, but part of me is like, well, would been nice to see how they won,
Right,
So
right. That's true. Yeah. I don't have anything except some final thoughts. I don't know if you have any like.
well, I do not have any. Even I've given all my thoughts on
Oh,
this,
really?
so
Okay. Well, I mean,
just take it away. Yeah,
I just
take it
wanted to
away.
sum up my thoughts. Okay, so again,
Hmm.
John's when Courtney, that Stargirl, she finds out that her family's alive. When she finds out that Patricia being there, a Star Woman, means the family's alive. I mean, that is palpable. The feeling that she has of relief and happiness. Um, but what really impressed me is that there were real stakes in this story. You get a lot of stories just don't have stakes, and you felt the stakes here. You really knew
Hmm.
that if they didn't get things fixed, if they didn't beat Degaton, then it wasn't just Courtney's family not, surviving or being restored, but there wouldn't be any of the Silver Age or Bronze Age or any heroes going forward. And I thought that Johns and Kramer and the whole crew just made this one of my I don't know. I say this every time we review a story that I like. I'm like, oh my god, this is great. It's on my top shelf now. So, but I think there's more like that out there by Johns. It's a testament to his skill, especially at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like now having read this and I'm now a little bit I now feel like I'm familiar somewhat with some of these characters, so I wouldn't feel so lost if I were to like jump into this overall JSA series at some point
Hmm.
and start reading it. It would probably be it. I'd have a little tie to some of these characters, either knowing what they if I go past this or even start back at the beginning of this volume, know what it's heading towards. I feel like I could certainly enjoy it. I
Yeah,
think so,
yeah,
and because like these are just not characters that I'm familiar with. I've not read Atom Smasher and Stargirl
yeah.
and Sand and the modern version Mister Terrific. I've
Right.
just not read these characters. They're not high on my list of favorite characters. I mean, they're not even in the top 50 probably.
Yeah. This was
But
yeah,
if since they're well written, this is a well written story. I feel like I could enjoy this.
yeah. But you would
So
enjoy it so much
I
more
may
if you
have
knew the
to
history
add
of
to the
all
list.
the
Hmm.
characters, and I feel the same way with some of the Marvel stuff. But And DC kind of, unfortunately, it just seems like they got away from the legacy stuff and put some of the original heroes, not original, but say the Hal Jordans and the Barry Allens back as the primary Green Lantern and Flash, where I was perfectly fine with both Hal and Barry staying dead because, at least Barry had a good death,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Wally was just knocking it out of the park as the Flash. So when you start seeing them kind of, for the sake of selling books, bringing back the originals, it just causes confusion. That's why you got confusion with two Flashes in very similar costumes now. It's you got like Wallace West that was created kind of like as part of, he was in uh, the Flash TV show,
CW series.
right? The CW series, and now he's nowhere to be found because there's just too many doggone Flashes running around.
There's too many speedsters. It's way too many speedsters.
Yeah.
That's my brother-in-law would say. You can't swing a cat in the room without hitting a speedster. So.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, I have nothing else to add,
Okay,
Mike.
well,
So what else?
I-
How you want to wrap this up?
Okay, well, first I'm going to wrap it up by giving an off-the-cuff nod to Shag Matthews of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. This was his brainchild, and not just brainchild, but his organizing efforts, and he knows how to keep speaking of cats, a herd of cats together. He knows how to herd us all, keep us on the right timeline. That's much appreciated. And if you liked the JSA and you want to kind of like follow along with them from the 90s series forward, he does have a series or a podcast right now called JSA in the 90s that's covering the Len Straczynski and Mike Parabeck JSA stories. And then he plans on eventually going into the JSA in the 2000s. So that would give anybody a good opportunity to learn more about the JSA. So just a quick plug there. But other than that, all we have is our next episode.
Right. So, well, Mike, since you mentioned it, do you know what's coming up on episode 208 of the Campus Comics Cast?
I do. It's pre-orders. That wasn't hard for me to remember, even though Shad has always set the bar pretty high. I did remember it's going to be pre-orders wherever you get your comics in the future. That's what we're going to try to cover. We don't know exactly what distributorship will be like, but you can count on us doing our darndest to tell you what we liked and what you might be interested in.
And if you want to reach out to Mike and I, you can do that at podcasts@birdcomics.com. And we would love it if you would subscribe to the Campus Comics Cast. And then also, Mike has his own little side podcast you should be aware of. So, Mike, you want to give a quick rundown of the roadshow?
Yeah, the Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow is a little side project I started like 3 years ago already. Try to get episodes out monthly. The basic idea is that since I travel so much for work and I was going to comic shops anyway, I try to arrange for an interview with a shop in the area that I am working or vacationing in, and I ask them after talking to them about their shop and the ins and outs of it. I ask them to recommend a book for me to read, and I always have a co-host with me, and we review that book and talk about it on the show. I'm about 26 episodes in, and I've got about 47 total, so I still got a backlog, and I'm doing everything I can to get them out as soon as I can. I happen to be in Columbus right now as we record, and I do plan on interviewing a shop on Thursday and checking them out. So it's been fun.
And Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you directly, how might they do that?
You can get me at an email, mike@comicshoproadshow.com. You can find me on Blue Sky under the same handle, or you can find Scott or I on the Campus Comics Cast Facebook page. So you got multiple ways of contacting.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURG comics.com, where there are links to my social media pages and eBay store. And we'll be back soon talking about those pre-orders.
Let's hope Jammy works.